Everyone, welcome at Wavect. Another episode, and as you can see, Ernesto is already super excited because today we will talk with Gunther Bergauer, who is the owner of X.O.T trading and senior consultant at Atlanto. And we will talk in this episode about a project he did in the past for, let's say, a huge corporate, a huge company, and they basically founded a small, let's say, HR unit within that corporate, let's say, landscape. And we will actually discuss how they navigated from 0 to 1, like what were the organizational challenges, the technical challenges, and all about leadership and all that kind of stuff that is necessary to actually have a successful product. And this project actually went around 10 to 12 years and became highly successful. So it's definitely something you might want to check out because it will definitely help you for your own project, be it in the startup context or within the corporate landscape. So without waiting anymore, let's jump right into it.
Wavect, the web-free software company that understands what you want.
Hi Gunther, great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time. Yeah, starting out, when we had our previous sessions, one thing that really, struck out or was really obvious to me is that you have a really diverse but yet really deep expertise in several fields. So just looking at that, what was one of the most challenging projects so far that you either have built yourself, that you have contributed to, or whatever you would like to focus on?
Yes, I think I should tell for my first big project I think I've worked on was a project of the payment industry, and it was something like a transaction router for payments. And in this time, I was rather new in the field of software engineering. I was a software engineer there, a lead software engineer, and it was very interesting that there was no real experience in the company I worked with making transaction systems. But they told me, oh, that's not a big problem because we have made a lot of cool stuff before, and what could happen? And so they started like a startup does in the middle of the scene, and the big issues arose some time later, because when it was developed and it got productive, it was not clear, or it was not obvious that there are a lot of different non-functional properties to be compliant with, and just to make a lot of transactions per second, or to be highly secure in your operation and so on. It was really very interesting, and they just got into it and said, oh my God, we have to do this now. And it was a really very flexible and iterative approach then. And nobody knew if it will work out, but it worked out finally, and it was a big success. But there were really troublesome nights on the way there. But it was really cool because it was really underestimated, as often it is, because you do not know the requirements before. You have no experience in the field, perhaps, and you want to start something new and say, "Oh, that sounds to be a good business." And then you get into it and you have to deal with the problems coming up. And if you have a good team and you have a good team spirit, you can solve the problems occurring. There's always a way out. So that's the message I've learned. And I think this was really a very, very engaging and really cool project. And I've learned a lot of it, because you learn the most if you get into compelling a really hard issues to solve. Then you are really your creativity comes out and so on. That's the thing happened, and real team spirit real team spirit can only be developed in challenging situations, I think. You cannot do it on the paper sheet. It's not possible.
Absolutely. You said a couple of really interesting things now. I'm just wondering, the project got really huge, but how did it actually start out? Because you might have done some kind of market analysis or, just tell us a little bit about the early beginnings, like how did the project start and how did it evolve over time?
So it was not a real startup idea. So it was not like, okay, we are doing things because we want to do them. It was just an occasion. So some customer of a customer had a problem. He wanted to change his system and had nobody at hand doing it. And so the company CEO stepped in and said, okay, we can do this. We are the best at it. So it's just and he was very convincing. And so because he was so convincing, the customer of the customer said, yes, we do it with you. And that's what the starting point. But he uh, didn't realize at that moment in how big this project really will get. So this was the big problem. But always be on the edge and say, okay, we will make the impossible possible. It's always a good thing to have this mindset because it's not so common in mid-Europe, just that you have this mindset. It's more a US or UK mindset, I think. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So when was that tipping point when your team or you basically set or let's say got to the point where they said where you said, okay, now it's going to be an actual product. It's not just individual software for that specific client. It's becoming an actual product. And what was the tipping point?
I think it took 3 to 5 years, really 3 to 5 years until we realized the business value, because we were so concentrated on making it possible that we completely had not the side of the surroundings. So we do not. But then we actually get more and more about what it should be like, and why. And what is the real case, why we are doing it, and why it is successful. And that's really cool, because that's the point we learned very late, but it was the point which was the valuable point we've learned, because then we know, that's the cause why you make it this way and not the other way round. That's really cool, because if you are very concentrated on one customer, you always see his or her requirements, and there is no how and why, and that often the because you are the service provider here, and even in that time, because it was 20 years ago, the agile development construct cast was evolving. So it was very common to say, okay, you give me some project, we do it, and that's good. And I think that was a learning too, because we then switched our developing approach and said, okay, our developing approach is more fitting into the agile world. And then we did Scrum and Kanban and such things, and they were very successful because we shifted our mindset then to say we have to know the real requirements earlier in the stage, because then we can build up our product better to fit the market. And it's just like an entrepreneur could think, but if you are only a service provider, you have another line of thinking, and that's the case, and this is what was really cool. And so I think the whole company spirit developed and got more experience there, and it's cool.
You said it was not a regular startup, or it was not a startup, right? Because it was contained in a larger company. Like,
Yeah.
what were the superior challenges when it comes to you have that corporate approach, basically corporate mindset, and then you still need to act like a startup to make that product successful.
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah, and I think it was because it was possible because the mindset in the company was very open. So it was left to the team to decide how it should work, how they all should work, collaborate together. So there was a big freedom in there, and this was the key success. Because if there would have been some strict processes, I think it would not have been possible. I think, and it's because. The company was in these days was rather young and was acquired by a bigger company then, and they let the mindset as it was. So they did not real incorporated in their corporate identity. So they leave like you are your own company, make your thing, and that's good for us. And we leave you there. If you are successful, you can do what you want. So in this case, this was the reason why it worked out, and it worked out because of the big company. I think if as we were there as a company, it was a company of 30 or 40 people, I think. So it was rather small, and if we would have proposed as this company to say, okay, we make you this transaction system. The customer said, no, you are too small for us. We need a big player. And so, but we could take hijacking on the bigger company and say we are the HL unit in the bigger company, and so this worked out. It's really cool because otherwise you never get the chance to do this as a project.
Oh, Ernesto, what do you have here? As you know, Ernesto is our chief meme officer at our company Wavect. And yeah, we just launched a web-free card game for kids, 2 to 5 players plus 10 years old. And it's all about web3, the risks, the opportunities, the challenges. And basically, you play this card game and have to collect Ernesto. Like how he's eating french fries, popcorn, sitting in a bucket, these kind of things. So it's really just a super playful way of engaging with the space and actually understanding how it works. So I would really appreciate if you check it out. Of course, we earn some money with that, but every cent, every dollar goes directly towards the free Web3 workshops we do for children. We just had one in Bangkok in November. So I hope you like it, and if you have some feedback, please leave it below. Absolutely
So
makes sense, yeah. So basically, let's say the larger corporation on top of that gave you the freedom to, of course, in a compliant way, you had to certainly meet some kind of superior rules, I assume.
yes, of course, there was some
But
governance there, of course.
yeah,
That's clear. But I think it was the right approach here, and it was the it was the best approach for both companies because the big one was not able to do it in this HL way and to get this knowledge to do the systems in the right way because they are very process oriented, very big, very slow, as you say, and too slow to adapt, I think, for that kind of project. And we at the time were very small, tiny, very agile, and so were able to adapt. And so it was the benefit of both worlds to make the project a success, I think.
yeah, of course. If you have the social proof, basically, right, because you're part of a bigger company, that's a huge level which you can take, right?
Yeah.
That's usually what many startups are missing, right? They're just
Yes,
a
that's
startup, right? And so the big ones, don't really want to, oftentimes are hesitant to work with you because, of course, there's additional risk involved with that. It's a different mindset, as you said, all these kind of things. But how many people have you been, on, like on the best stage of the project?
I think working for the project when it was really successful, we had several teams. So several developers. We had an operation team. We had developer teams there. and each team consists of about 5 people, because 5 people are the most efficient unit in an agile environment to be successful. And of course, there's some management layer and some consulting layer and so on. But the core, I think about 20 people. And you never ever, that's the big issue. Even if you have a very large company and they do a project, there is indeed only a small team, a small core team, making all the things possible. I think that's always the case, because otherwise, if it's too widely spread, it always the overhead of the processes and the communication is too huge, so you cannot be successful at the long term. So yeah.
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah, I think there's this rule, right? The bigger you get, like with every, I'm just making up numbers now. If you have 100 employees, like 20 people do 90% of the work and so on. And the bigger you get, the more extreme this,
This yeah.
So
It's really the case. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and but I think just for bigger corporates, it is the case that they need small units somehow in a closed environment to do things they cannot do on a bigger scale. So their main project products they maintain on a bigger level, and they have a lot of stuff involved. But on the innovative side, they need some smaller units just to get things thinking and so on, some innovation hubs and so you often see them. But I think it's hard for a bigger company to get them staying alive, because they are just too isolated often, and they have to, but their output should be integrated into their product management and into their strategy. And it's often not the case, because they do some cool stuff and they say, okay, yeah, go it in the first drawer and close it. So
that brings me to a really interesting point, because of course it's an isolated unit, as a somewhat isolated unit, right? Like the big corporations usually go a lot by data, right? From my knowledge, of course they have to. So how did you go with delivering ongoing results, although the project took a really long time to actually take off because you had to do a lot of groundwork and these kind of things? But how did you ensure or try to avoid that the project actually just gets cut because they don't see the results they want to see in a certain time period?
I think this was just because it was because of liability, I think, somehow, because they have signed a long-term contract, and there were a huge, let me say, there was a lot of money inside, and if you said I cannot deliver, it would have been a very bad reputation, and would have cost a lot of money, and so it was cheaper and better to keep it going. So that was the big issue there. So it was about the contracts, I think, because and that was cool for us, of course, because they said, okay, that's if we make some. You have not to make revenue at once. So there was a business plan, I think, calculated for 5 years or so. And they say, okay, if you make in the fourth year you make a huge revenue, then maybe there can be a lot of loss before. So it was really the right mindset there. But of course, there you cause always trouble, because then in the controlling point of view, they say, what are you doing here? But you have to be patient. You always have to be patient. If something great you are working on, you always have to have the right patience, because if you are too patient and say it will, then it will not work out. So that's the counterpart. But it can be that you are too patient, say, okay, next year it will work out. You have to define clear cuts and say, okay, if it is not, it has not the right development until this checkpoint, we will cut it off or do some other strategy there. But if you have the right thinking and say, okay, it cannot be very successful at the beginning of the time, it need to evolve. It need to get to the ground. So because it's a big project, and I think if this thinking is there, if this mindset is there, it will yeah. So maybe this was luck. Maybe this was the involvement of the right people. They are just that they can um, create this confidence in everything that it works finally out. And what we have to say is, after 5 years, it was really a successful project. But the most successful years were the last years. The project ran about 10 or 12 years, and then it was closed or cancelled because of somehow emerging in acquisition, you can say. And then I think the last years were the most productive, because the change rate was very little, I think, so to say. So it was very stable. The efforts were very optimized in there, and so you have very small efforts and big output. So it was really the best years there, the golden years, you can say.
Yeah, basically a cash cow.
Basically a cash cow. So.
Okay, and looking at all these things, all these challenges, what was the one thing, or was there one single organizational challenge that still is on top of your head, where you say, oh, okay, that was close, like that was really difficult?
Yeah, I think it was one day, or even there occurred some problems. Nobody knew in the team where they came from. So it was the case that they say, okay, we have some big problems, and we do know nothing about them. And if we cannot solve them in days, we are off. It will be off. So we have to solve something. You do not know why it occurs. It's just like the finding a needle in a haystack or something like that. It's just you have to concentrate. But we had the big advantage that we have really very capable and very cool people in our team, and so we finally really could solve it. Not in the few days, but there was a workaround. We found a workaround, and then got another days, and so finally we succeeded in solving this problem. This was really a hard time, because every day you went there and you got into the office saying, what about the problem? Can we solve it, or is it all over? So it's just like this thinking of being of having made so many efforts, and finally you have a non-successful project. But I think that happens often, very often, and I think these situations are really, if they are turning around to be finally successful, I think there are big learnings there, and you get a lot of social benefits, and you get a lot of experience and so on. But if they fail, okay, maybe you can now start a new business.
Okay, so basically the biggest organizational challenge at the same time was the technical challenge, if you are able to deliver in that period of time. Can I ask what the technical challenge was, or is it too specific?
It was really too specific. It was a performance challenge, actually. It was like there was a lack of performance at certain moments in time, and nobody knew at that time where they came from. There was no real deterministic cause. It was like there's something happening and nobody knows why and how, but it happened, and it was so it's like if a system crashes and you do not know why it crashed, even if you deeply investigated it, you do not know. That's really all. But this is often these technical questions you need a very deep insight, and This was an insight which was related to many layers, not only the software layers. It was down to the infrastructure layer. So it was a very correlated problem, a very difficult to track problem. So that's always the case. If you are only if it's situated only in one layer, so in the software layer, or in some middleware layer, or some hardware layer, you will more easily find it. So it's easier to find. But if it's just because here in the virtualization layer there's some setting, and then there is some software setting, and you have some network latencies, and they all are necessary that the problem occurs. Yeah, you will. It's hard to detect. Yeah.
So
But
many factors.
I think these challenges are even growing nowadays because of the higher abstraction of virtualizations, of microservices on public cloud infrastructure and so on. So it gets, if there is really such a problem, it's more difficult to solve nowadays, I think, because you have only the responsibility of a small part of it, and the other you have to get from your service partners, which are often bigger providers, and their support processes are not the fastest, I say. So
True that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, well, that plays hand in hand, I guess, with basically it's somewhat, I wouldn't say a race, but we see more and even better and better monitoring tools out there,
yeah.
probably just because of that, right? Because your systems become much more complex, because the user gets accustomed to higher standards, and it's just a somewhat vicious cycle which results in better products, but it also means, as I said, you need more people, more companies as well involved, so that creates organizational challenges. And just speaking of larger teams, I'm always wondering, or personally curious about, is when you have such a small organizational unit or company or startup, there are two kind of, I wouldn't say leadership styles that you can choose, but when something bad happens, did you, of course it always depends, but did you in tendency tell the whole team about that, or swallow the frog yourself and try to shield them from the negativity? Like, how did it work out for you?
Depends. I think
Okay.
that really depends, because it's just if there is a benefit for them to know. So I think if it's good that they know they made something not so efficient, or even say they made some mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes, and this helps that they catch on their responsibility and say, okay, I feel responsible for it, I can do something about it, and then I have a challenge to solve, and then the team gets more productive. I would tell them. But if it's something only the customer claims to be a problem and the team can do nothing about it, I would not tell. I would say, okay, the customer has some problems, but do not care about it. So because then
Gotcha.
they say, okay, where we are feeling with you. No, they're saying, okay, why you are bothering with me, us with that problem, because we cannot do anything about it. So it's a good decision to make. Is there a benefit for the team or not to know it? But if you have a team which is very lazy, so to say, okay, we deliver something and it will get on, and you always you always eat the frog, so to say. It's not good, because they will not learn that they are not delivering the right things, and so they should take responsibility for the work they are doing. And I think that's often in bigger organizations. That's a main problem, that you have a team only responsible for a small part in a big chain of delivery, and any team say finger pointing, or the other team, we are not responsible for that. That's not our problem. And I think if you are a leader and can accomplish this and say every team takes a responsibility for their work, it will work out nicely.
It's always about the team in the end, right? Because
Yes.
if you have a great team and a bad business idea, it can still work out. You can still pivot, you know. But if you have a bad team and a great business idea, you lost.
And I think another main topic is you truly should share the vision of the project, the vision of the company, the vision of the product or whatever in detail with every team involved in the process. Because even if they are doing only a very little brick, put a very little brick into the wall, I think they can optimize this, because if they see that they're part of a greater idea, a greater thing, and they feel part of, they say, I can do my best. I can really optimize my brick. And then it gets a better wall at the end. So that's my learning, because every brick was put together and it worked out fine. So because every brick was optimized by the team, it was built. So who built it? So I think that's a main point of success there. And I think that's the main reason of leadership. If you have a clear vision, you have not a vision changing every year. That's often a problem too. So we are going this year in this direction and the next year in this direction. You have to establish the trust. So the teams they must trust in their leader. So otherwise, they will not get to their goals. So that's clear. And good leadership is always demonstrate where to go and why to go there. So
Yes, I think Jeff Bezos said that, right? Be stubborn on your vision, basically, but flexible in your
yes,
approach, right? So that's absolutely, I love that. Um, of course, the project had many ups and many downs, right? As every company has. But are there some things in retrospective that you would do differently now if you would start the same project over, like when it started
of
back then?
course, because I now have knowledge I hadn't before. Because in the same situation with the same knowledge, it's very difficult to answer. Because if we say, would there have been a better process for it just to get the knowledge beforehand or something like that? But most often it is not the case. So I have no clear insight to say, okay, we have done something completely wrong, or go around the circle or something like that. We were really efficient, I think. But of course, were many things we could have optimized earlier, but there was no time, no focus, no whatever. So if you were in the completely same situation with the completely same experience, I think we would have done it the similar way. But if you are now, you say, okay, this is a project of that kind, you should do it this way. I think it will get much more streamlined because
Of course, of course. Well, it absolutely makes sense. Of course, if you know stuff now that you didn't know before, but more in terms of learnings, you know, let's say it's a different project, but the key learnings that you took out of that project, how would it possibly have affected the company altogether?
I think what we could have done better was the mindset of estimation. So there was an estimation of the project cost, or of the amount of work which is involved to complete the project and so on. It was a nice guess because you did not know there, but they said, okay, yeah, we do not know, so we only count what we know. And I think it was a completely wrong approach, because then you have a very small estimate, and everybody is bound to this estimate, and you have a team delivering, and they say, okay, we deliver good stuff, but it takes too much time. It wasn't. We are highly over our estimates. It gets they getting bored, to say they are getting angry, or say we do our best, but we cannot do it in this time, and we are catched because we are not effective enough. And so that may be the mindset then. And it's always good to have to give the opportunity to be fast enough. I think that's most often a project management problem. If there are high risks, you should take into account the risks. Even if you say, I sell the project for a tenth of the price, that does not matter, because it's a sales decision. So you make the decision in the sales and not in the development. But if you do put all together, you sell it for the tenth of the price. They could not deliver it in a tenth of the time. So, and this was the big learning, I think, because this was but this came with this agile development and with the thinking of value, and so it got better and better. Just to know, this is the worth of the value of the whole package, and there are some risks inside, and I think we need about this, and we do not estimate the real cost, but we say that's complex, that's more complex, that's most complex, or what, like that's just this relative estimate, and they say, okay, you know it about story points. So because this makes every project unique. So a story point in one project might cost 5 days, in another it might cost 1. So, and you are not bound to it, because, and this, I think this is good, because then the team can concentrate on their own work and say, okay, in the beginning of the project we needed 5 days, but now we need 3 days to deliver the same complexity. So we are better now, and that's a positive feedback, and not the other team is faster than we are. That's a really wrong approach there.
Absolutely, because it creates, I wouldn't say toxicity, but more kind of, rival thinking within the company, and you don't want that, right? You want to be fully aligned. So expectation setting being a major thing that you took away from that project. That's interesting. Well, I would like to go a little bit more personal, if that's okay.
That's okay. It's not too personal, but
no
I need not answer.
What is one of the most, or possibly most surprising things about your career, or your past in general, like that you would like to share? Quick intermission. If I could ask you for one single favor, it would be that you hit subscribe onto this channel, because it helps our channel more than you can imagine. And the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests get. So thank you very much for watching, and let's continue with the episode.
Oh, that's a really hard question, but I try to. I think it's the discovery of the unexpected. So just I'm a guy, because I'm graduated in mathematics and in mathematics. So I have really always a plan, So you go this plan along, and there are some interference from the left and from the right. But if you had asked me in the past, so in my 20s, and say, where do you think you are in 10 years? I had a clear vision and say, okay, I want to go there. But it changed a lot in times, and there were many surprising facts that I decided to go in a completely other direction. And so, because I never wanted to be a software developer, I said, no, software development is nothing for me. I want to be a researcher. And then I researched a lot, and then I found out that researching does not make me happy. So because it does not fit to my personality because it's not so collaborative or communicative or whatever you can say. So you have to tell, okay, I have to do something else, and it's so far from reality. It's just in your mind. Even it's very abstract, and it was really hard to get the pleasure of this abstract thinking and so on to say, okay, that makes me lucky. And so I decided, okay, then because I can do software development, okay, then I do software development. And but even there, I was not happy after a couple of years, and then I think, okay, I should go to management. And then I was like, okay, management is not good, I should go to consulting. Then I said, okay, now consulting is cool, but go to sales. But so just circling around, because it's always, if there is some new interesting topic, and I think if the complexity is right, if it's high enough, any topic can be very exciting if you make a deep dive. And this was personally my thread, that I always picked up some unresolved problems or topics I was not in, and I said, okay, that's now interesting. I want to dive into that. So.
Okay, cool stuff. Yeah, well, we evolve, right? Interests change, personality changes. So just makes sense to me. Love it.
Life is a constant change at all. I think that's the main point, I think. So even if you say I can plan, you cannot plan. I think there is a joke about it. So if you want to make God laugh, make a plan. So yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And expect the unexpected. Another,
There's
the so many.
Yeah, but I think that makes life very tenuous and I think very interesting because then you never know what's happened next. And I like the uncertainty. I get used to it, and I like it really, because every change, even if it's very unexpected, you can see a positive side in it, even if it's hard to see. But there is always a positive side. You can say, okay, I follow this path. This is the opportunity there, even if there are hard times. I can make something out of it. And I think this positive mindset makes you more lucky than or luckier. So than if you have always the thing, what could happen next? Because there can happen a lot.
Absolutely. As you said, life is, a huge wave of ups and downs and unexpected things along the way. And the more you accept that and resonate and try to grow through that, I think you're fine. Right? So, cool. Really thanks, Gunther, for that. Do you maybe have 3 things, because we have discussed a lot of things, that you would like people to remember, maybe for their own project or something that could possibly help them?
That could possibly help them. Okay. If you have a big challenge, always form an excellent team. So be a good leader. This makes you successful. Think always positive, because it's not worth to think negative. And the second thing, have or make your own vision of your life, even if it's not clear where you're going. But if you have no vision, you have no power to get there, to get anywhere. So that's because I have a long time I circled somehow around, but to get the real focus. And if you're not focused, you will not get happy either. So I think that's the 3 key points I want to share.
Awesome.
Even if they're very general, but
they're really powerful if applied. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks Gunther for your time. And yeah,
Thank you for having me.
likewise, likewise. Was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, Kevin.
I hope you liked this episode. If you're curious about more of Gunther's content and insights, I will leave his LinkedIn and other credentials below in the video description so that you can reach out to him personally as well. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. And if you like this episode, please like this video, comment, hit subscribe. It all helps. You know, the bigger the channel gets, the more attractive the guests also become, and the better insights we can give you on that channel. So thank you for watching, and yeah, leave us your feedback in the comments as well, please.
Wavect, the web-free software company that understands what you want.